I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about a topic that has come up for a lot of our Guru customers, and is something people are always trying and testing and approaching in different ways for their company, and that is about building your business case for Guru and communicating the value that Guru brings to your organization. Today, we have a featured speaker. His name is Brantley Merritt. You can see him on this call. He has walked through a few different approaches at ServiceSource, and he'll be able to share today his journey in communicating the business case of Guru to his organization, and kind of show you where they're at now after a few different approaches, which is going to be awesome. And I'm so excited for him to speak because he's got a lot of value to share. First, if you haven't already, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, drop your name, role, company. I think everybody's kind of shared where they're dialing in from, but we're still curious. And we have a office trivia question in the Zoom chat as well, which is, I would say, like maybe a 7 out of 10 in difficulty. So if you can figure that out, you get special points. But to walk through what the plan is for today, we're going to, like I said, be focused on what tips and tricks we all have to share with each other when it comes to building the business case for Guru and communicating that value internally. I'm going to walk you through some updates that we have from a community perspective, but we're going to really be able to dive into hearing Brantley's approach and then have time for discussion and Q&A to hear where you all are at with how this shows up with your organization, what challenges you're facing now, and spend some time problem solving that together as a community. And then by the end, we'll have about 15 minutes or so to split up into smaller breakout rooms. And this will help us, continue those conversations on like, a smaller group level, but also get to know each other. It's like kind of the networking piece that, I don't know about you, but I'm personally missing working remotely for this long. So looking forward to that. And this is the breakdown of everything I just said. We'll spend about 15 minutes for each section. So first up, I just want to get this on your radar and share some community resources that are available if you didn't know about them yet. First off, if you're not in the Guru community on Slack, I may be biased, but it is the place to be. We have a lot of great discussions. Even just this morning when we logged in, people were asking questions about templates, giving product feedback, and it's a great place to connect to other people who are in similar roles, facing similar challenges in the way that they are growing and expanding Guru. So if you're not in there yet, there's a link to easily join. We also have been doing a bunch of different virtual events, so those recordings are available. So you can check out recent remote-a-thon sessions and watch different customers share their stories. We recently had a speaker from Saros talk, and Yext, SalesLoft, Square, those were other customers shared their perspectives on knowledge management and building knowledge-driven culture. So be sure to check those out. And then I did want to get it on your radar. We do have some upcoming virtual events as well that you can tune into live. Guru Deep Dive is another one, and I'll get into more details about the next deep dive in a second. But you can always feel free to check out upcoming Guru events at events.getguru.com. Now this is like a special announcement, a new program that we're doing that I just wanted to share with you. We have opened up the Share Your Guru Story program. So we, in the spirit of seeking and sharing knowledge from everybody in the community, we wanted to create an easier way for customers to share what they've learned as they've tackled different Guru challenges. Obviously today we're going to be talking about like building the business case for Guru. But there's many other aspects of knowledge management, as you know. And so I wanted to invite you all to think about how this has shown up in your organization and what piece of your experience with Guru that you're really proud of that you think other people would love to hear about. If you have any questions or would want to brainstorm on that, I'm always here as a resource, but we've created a really easy way for you to just drop your reflections, and then we are here to amplify that to the community so that everybody can continue to learn from each other. And then also this is a pathway for you to be featured for thought leadership as well. And then this is specifically about the next Guru Deep Dive, but We have community events every month, and deep dives are kind of the sister event to the Guru the Gathering. And what the next Guru Deep Dive is going to be about is going to be diving into Guru Analytics. So if you've ever wanted to learn more about a Guru specific feature, see how Guru themselves or ourselves uses the feature, how other customers do, this is going to be the perfect setting to really hone in on that. And the next event about Guru Analytics is going to piggyback off in a nice way, just about how you can dig into the platform itself and start communicating what's happening with your team and how they're using Guru. And our featured customer, their search discovery, has a really good example about how they've used Guru Analytics to map and improve their new hire onboarding. So be sure to check that out, and you can RSVP there. So we'll transition more into the topic right now, but like I said, building your Guru business case and the idea of communicating the Guru value to your organization comes up a lot for customers, because many customers start off with Guru with like one experiment or within one team. And when you get started with something like knowledge management, it's a very like niche thing to begin with, and you have to really figure out how to get people to understand how this fits into their workflow, how this can help solve the pain points they have, and how it can really transform their work experience and help everybody work better and collaborate together, right? So when it comes to this, what we have learned through working with customers is that metrics and stories are super, super important to doing this. And everybody's team looks a little bit different in what they value. So when you're starting off building your Guru business case, it's important to think about those questions and take that discovery time to understand what your company values, what's most important, and build off from there and map knowledge management to it. And the reason I share that background is because we're going to hear about how Brantley does that specifically. But what you see here, the screenshot, is a new resource we created in collaboration with some of our CSMs on the Guru team that pulls together the best practices and the approaches that they've seen work when working with customers. And it's a good way for you to get started in figuring out, you know, what is that core story that you're trying to tell to your executive team, to the users of Guru, to get them to be excited about the knowledge that's at their fingertips and how to help them in their job and day-to-day roles. So I encourage you to dive into that. Rachel's going to share that link in the chat. And we can get more into specifics of that resource and the discovery questions there in our discussion. But for now, I'm going to kick it off to Brantley. I'm going to stop talking for a second and give Brantley the floor and have him explain, you know, what his experience has been at ServiceSource, what his experience has been with Guru from the first time he heard of it to where they are now, and how knowledge management showed up in their organization and made sense to their executive team and their sales teams over time. So I will stop sharing right now, Brantley, and pass you the slides.
All right, thank you, Kaylee. Get my screen pulled up here. Okay, can everyone see my screen now? All good? Cool. All right, well, guys, thanks for having me. My name is Brantley Merritt. I am a manager in our L&D department at ServiceSource. I've been with ServiceSource for about 7.5 years now. So I guess I'm in it for the long haul, and I'm going to retire here. But so I've been a part of knowledge management for almost 5 years. 5 years now, and it's been a crazy ride through L&D and through knowledge management. And but yeah, I just want to tell a little bit of our story and why we worked with Guru initially, and kind of some of the pain points we've experienced and the business case we built up front, and then up until 2020, what we've tried to do as well to almost build a second business case to increase our licenses and continue that momentum. So let me move forward here to my first slide. So just a quick backstory about ServiceSource. We're a business-to-business company who works with many different companies across the globe. We basically handle a lot of their customer success, inside sales, and do a lot of their customer relationship management as well. So um, all these accounts have all kinds of different processes that our reps have to follow as they work on behalf of these accounts, like Google and Microsoft. So with that comes a ton of knowledge and how we're recording these processes and giving this information to our sales teams. So initially when we launched Guru, it was still kind of a pilot. We didn't roll this out to all of our teams. It was only a handful of those who needed it first that we gave it to. So we only had 1,800 users for the longest time. So there was still quite a few accounts that were suffering not having Guru. Um, and so we'll get to that kind of how we've landed moving forward. But so yeah, that's kind of what we do at ServiceSource, and it's a difficult engagement. It's basically, it's not, ServiceSource isn't like one company. We're essentially like 35 different companies, and it can be quite difficult, especially trying to keep all this documentation up to date, especially for all these logos who, their ecosystem changes, their tech stack changes, their go-to-market strategies change. So we have to adapt and keep up with them too. So keeping documentation current for all these different accounts is quite overwhelming, especially with a very small team that I run. Okay, so before Guru, knowledge management was kind of a new thing at ServiceSource as well. And we had run a couple of different platforms. Some of them were homegrown, and so I presented this business case back in 2017 to our leadership team, which was in a different organization at the time that I was presenting this to. But so we had some key business objectives we were looking to solve for with Guru, and so I've got them listed out here of what we're trying to solve for at the time, which was we needed something built for the millennial employee. We had old clunky systems that were very difficult to scour and find the content you were looking for, and to be able to trust that it was current and updated. We had no way to measure any sort of analytics and see what sort of adoption we were having in the platform and where it was affecting and helping our sales teams. And then we were looking to have something that could provide some sort of guided selling, is what we were calling it. Guru offered, the contextual knowledge triggers, that whole component of it is what we were looking for too. All right. So this was just another slide back when I presented this. When we started looking at our current solutions, like I said, we had 3 different knowledge management platforms, depending on the company or logo that we call them, that the sales teams were on. They would have, one of 3 different knowledge platforms, all of which had, many issues, and some of them are called out here as far as how difficult it was to find content, the adoption, or really not even knowing if it was being adopted. Cost was high to maintain these platforms. There was no, support from any sort of team like we have here with Hillary and Snehal and these guys here. So, we just didn't have anything. We were trying to build everything from the ground up every single time. So it just wasn't scalable. So that's kind of where we started talking about Guru back then. Here's where I listed some of the core requirements we were looking for in a platform. Again, I mentioned those 3 that we were using. So in comparison to what Guru was offering, this is what I was able to present up to our leadership team to say, here's just a quick snapshot of the things that we have and the things we absolutely need in a knowledge management platform. And so again, that's just kind of to reiterate that the challenges were there. Guru solved a lot of those challenges, and but it's interesting though, because these were what we were trying to solve for in 2017, and of course things change, and leadership changes, and I think we've got a slide on that as well. But just adapting to that challenge and what we're trying to solve for now is completely different what we were trying to solve for then, especially in a knowledge management solution. So let's see here. So when we started testing Guru, we rolled it out to one team to just pilot things. and we're looking at those particular topics on, as I mentioned, guided selling and contextual knowledge, and we wanted to be able to have systems speak to one another. So all these integrations the Guru has is fantastic. It's really helping what we're trying to solve for today. And then those measurable analytics, which looks like you guys have that as a hot topic for next time as well. But this is definitely something that's been super helpful to be able to actually see for the first time which teams are using it, where's it helping, where's it not, what sort of feedback are we getting. So all that's been a godsend so far. Okay, so after we rolled Guru out, again, like I mentioned before, we didn't roll this out to the whole business. There was only a select few who got this. And so we saw some positive results for sure, but we had a lot of challenges. And some of those had to do with, as I mentioned, leadership changes, go-to-market changes, just our strategy altogether. A big part of it too was I kind of stepped away from this for about a year and a half. I took a position in the same organization, but just a completely different role. So the direction of knowledge management at ServiceSource changed drastically, and the direction was going towards something completely different, and it was not being given a lot of support, and there was not a lot of buy-in anymore, and there was not a lot of upkeep, keeping the documentation current and trusted. So, if it wasn't for me raising my hand and noticing, hey, this program's falling apart, I obviously noticed the value. I, have worked with so many people who rely on this greatly to do their job and be successful and to train others and all that good stuff. I saw where it was going, so I kind of raised my hand. We had a new chief learning officer come in, and I raised my hand to her and told her, like, hey, we've got to do something about this. The knowledge management program is sitting with this other organization now. I think we should bring it back in. I could help steer it in the right direction, or at least give someone guidance if you hand it off to someone else. And she was like, well, I want you to run it. Let's get it back. So that changed the end of my 2019, and I had no idea what I was walking into, but I understood the challenge, and it was going to be tough to get things back on track. So I think we are now. So how did that happen though? So how did we get us in a place here in 2020, especially with all the challenges that we all face with business right now in this particular climate? Is at least what I did is we used a particular trigger, which was super helpful, which was just the timing of the renewal. So we had had a 2-year deal with Guru, and that came up for expiration in June. So we had spent the better part of our H1 strictly working on updating all of our content, which had been stale for so long because there just hadn't been that support and buy-in like we had needed. So we used that trigger to start these conversations with our leadership team, which again was completely different than the leadership team we had before, and the objectives we were trying to solve for then were completely different than what we're trying to solve for now. So what I did is I started to have these discussions, and I started to try to leverage these different folks and try to get an understanding of what some of these business needs were, and in a very a very tight window as well. We had to do this rather quickly. We didn't have, like I had the first time, with like 9 months to build out this business case and really understand, from the executive leadership team and from all the way down to the rep level, and really understand challenges to be able to build a true business case to say, this is why we need Guru. It was more so a last-ditch effort to find where I could and tap into different resources to build this last-minute case to present. Actually had to do a presentation with our CEO and our C-suite, but again, I had to understand through multiple conversations with different people what their issues were, what their objectives were, what's the objectives right now for us as a company, what are we trying to solve for, especially right now. So working diligently with Snehal and Hillary, last minute we were able to put together a lot of key pieces of information and give this presentation to our executive team. And so, I mean, it really worked out in our favor. But some of these bullet points here, I'm not even reading off of, but we, yeah, we understood onboarding was a new objective that had changed. That wasn't part of the key priorities when we first launched Guru. Onboarding was now a crucial piece since we're in this remote environment, that we needed to beef up our onboarding program and work with the other pieces of L&D to ensure that Guru was, working alongside our LMS and our other objectives to enhance that onboarding and new hire experience. And so that was a key thing as well, because that really helped our leadership team kind of begin that further conversation and discovery with the executive team, and really kind of pitching the idea that, yeah, they don't know anything about Guru when it comes down to it. The frontliner, the people who are building the content and work with it every day, we understand what Guru is, obviously, but communicating that message layers up so that they can communicate it to the executive team was very helpful. And the mission, of course, was onboarding in that perspective. So those were some of the big game changers. Another one, when you look at key stakeholders, one of our key stakeholders was our chief information officer. And he was very involved with the initial contract when we first launched Guru. So as I mentioned to Snehal and Hillary, I've always kept a relationship with him. He's out of Denver, so anytime I would be in Denver, I'd make sure at least to stop in to his office, say hello, go grab coffee. Always try to catch up with him. And even just the little things sometimes, at least he knows who I am every single time. He knows I'm the Guru guy. He knows that I'm doing everything in my power to make sure this is a successful platform. So it's just really some of those key relationships to maintain, even if it's just to save face sometimes. All right. Do a quick time check here. Okay, so I'm going to run through this last couple slides really quickly here. So as far as making this successful and how we did it, kind of last minute, is we tapped into the resources that we had. And we used this image on the right here is actually a screenshot that Hillary and Snehal helped put together. It's kind of this one pager that we used after we refreshed all this content that we did in H1. We kind of give a readout of everything that was happening, like how is this affecting new hires, and how much were they adopting the tool, how much were they in there, all the content that was trusted. I used some of these stats as I talked to our CEO and said, like, hey, our trust score went from this percentage to this percentage, and we increased adoption from this to that. And that really threw him, because the numbers were so low, and I think his words were, well, you were handed like a pile of garbage. And I mean, essentially, yes, based on where it was heading, that's what it was. So we worked our butts off through H1 to make sure that we could update a ton of this content and work with so many different subject matter experts across the globe in the various logos that we work with. But yeah, so ultimately what the results were is we increased our number of licenses from 1,700 to we'll be at 2,600 Guru users by the end of H2. And the bullet there, Guru now the number one KB, which it will be. So we're going to actually get rid of the other two platforms, and that was the key driver for our CIO, the Chief Information Officer, was what was in it for him. What was in it for him to kind of stick his neck out to kind of push this to the rest of his executive team. And it was, what benefited him was, well, all these other platforms that we're using, they require maintenance and a lot of things on the back end to keep them updated. And that was a waste of time and resources on his side for that. And this was just going to streamline it and make it easier for him. So this was not anything that was going to be impactful to really anyone outside of he and I, but he was able to present that as a huge value add and a cost savings for him and his department to reduce that number down to one. So that coupled with, this is the one source of truth for all new hires when they come in the door, they have Guru. This isn't a mixed bag. It just all made sense to streamline. And so many different wins for so many different organizations. So it was just really understanding how to appease everyone when ultimately, like, what what it would do for me was completely different what my objectives were. You know, I don't think anyone cared as much. This is going to affect me and my team. Is more so, what is this going to do for our business and these different organizations? And that's what we're ultimately able to leverage. All right. I believe this is the last slide I have. Yeah. So the key takeaways here is to understand, really just understand the business. I think, you know, the different organizations that you're working with, what are their objectives and how can you measure that? How can you present that with value? How can you show it to them? Lean on your guru team. You know, I've done that. We meet regularly, we talk, and you know, anything that I need, I feel like they're always there and quick to make that happen. Honestly, this wouldn't have happened without all of us working together. Well, at least the three of us working together to make this happen. Learn through experiments. Yeah, I mean, just test the waters on things. I think, you know, just for me, this is a platform that I have full confidence in and I believe in, and I've kind of been a champion from the beginning. So just, you know, experiment with things. You may fail sometimes. Of course, we've had our fair share of failures, but you know, just give it a shot. Ask for forgiveness later. And then I mentioned that a couple times. That just build relationships at all levels. I think it's key. Even if you're uncomfortable. I'm an introvert by nature, to be honest. I didn't want to do a presentation to the CEO and the executive team, but you know, at the end of the day, like I knew it was going to be it was going to be benefiting a ton of people. You know, 2,700 people. So yeah, so that's basically it. So I guess with that, I'll pass it back over to you, Kaylee, and we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Brantley. That was awesome. Yeah, I love whenever we have you guys be able to share your stories on these Guru the Gatherings. It feels like there's always a coin termed by people, and Brantley being called the Guru guy or like your go-to Guru guy. I know a lot of people here can relate to being the go-to Guru person of Guru. I think actually Gabriel said that in the chat too. So thank you so much for walking us through all that and sharing your takeaways. And what I'd love to spend some time now on are, if anybody has any specific questions for Brantley about his experience at ServiceSource, how he navigated certain roadblocks that came up, now's the time to talk through that. And once we get through any questions specifically for him, we can then kind of blend this into a group discussion about where you all are at in your experiences with building the business case of Guru, what roadblocks you're hitting, and yeah, what questions you have for the team. So do any questions come up for you guys for Brantley specifically? Looks like we have one in the chat. Would love to know how many people are on the knowledge team who worked to ramp up Guru. We currently have just one individual working on Guru in the day-to-day, that one Guru guy or gal or Guru person, and you just passed 1,000 cards. Wow, Rebecca, what a milestone. But yeah, Brantley, how many people were on the knowledge team who worked with you, or were you one-man show?
Yeah, so good question. So when we initially launched Guru, I think we primarily were based in North America. And I think we had a staff of, I think I had 5 people working for me in Nashville and Denver. So for that, we were supporting, I forget, I'd say anywhere from 5 to 10,000 cards, somewhere in that ballpark is what we would be supporting. So maybe similar, 1 to 1,000, I think is what you were saying. So, and we're still kind of at that number now. I have 5 that work for me, but mainly in other countries across the globe. So none here in North America any longer, unfortunately. But yeah, still same mark, about 5 for about 10,000 cards is what we'll be looking at, possibly more. We're doing a lot of migration. I don't really know the total of what we'll have in there when it's all said and done in H2, but that's our team.
Quantity.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Sure.
Brantley, if you could go back like to maybe not the beginning of H1, but maybe like a month before your renewal, would there be anything that you'd do differently to prepare? Like, I mean, now knowing what you know it took to get there, just curious.
You said prior to the renewal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have loved to have had more time for sure. So I think what, and this was talked about before, and I'm sure all of you, everyone on this call understands this, but leverage these people at Guru. I mean, whoever your CSM is, your account manager, use them because they are the gurus. Obviously, I think we as champions and users and managers and whatever our titles are, we understand it. And we know how it's working for our business or not working, but there's different things they can tap into, even if it's making something look a little bit prettier than you would have done. I mean, they can make that happen. But I think if I would have had more time, I would have put together something that we could have presented that was a little bit more meaningful, and didn't seem, obviously as fast tracked and sloppy, I guess, is what we had to work with. But I mean, it's the time frame we were given. But yeah, so I probably would have worked with you and Snehal to put together a really nice presentation and done some practicing and making sure that we're all aligned on what it was we were sharing. So
Awesome. Yeah, I think Gabriel had another question he dropped in the chat. So Gabriel, everybody, he is from Thrasio, and this Guru the Gathering is actually prompted by an idea from him, because he was sharing how we, share best practices and tips all the time in Guru the Gatherings, but what does that look like when it comes to templates or like analytics approaches for a business case? Obviously that varies from place to place, but it's still helpful to see what other people do. So Gabriel and Brantley, I'll connect you guys separately offline. He asked if there's any way he could see the specific presentation used to show execs with sensitive info redacted. So I know Brantley put together a bunch of slides, but also, as he was saying with Hillary, we have some like new Guru templates we've been testing out to share about like collection analytics, and you may have seen some with your CSMs, everybody on here, if we are working with the CSM, but those are also options and tools in your toolbox to use too. And so we can connect offline to get more visibility to those.
sounds good.
Awesome. Amber said, second that. So Gabriel said, interested in how you sourced analytics for the metrics that you presented to them.
Yeah, so for this one, again, it was kind of last minute, putting together what we could, and it changed. I feel like it changed every few hours for a couple of days what exactly we were trying to present. So what we did, since we were in H1, we were working so hard to update a ton of content, and we had to work with so many people to make sure that that was current trusted material for them specifically on their team. Our trust score went up 30 points. I think it was, right at 50%. We moved it up to 80% when we're talking about that volume of like, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 cards. So that was obviously a nice metric that we want to show, but beyond that, we wanted to kind of bring it down into a particular team and use that as an example and say, hey, on this team, we moved the needle this much for a trust score, but we saw adoption increase this amount on this team, which was a high priority team as well. So showing that, this is something, an account that we work with that we obviously all put a lot of stock and value into. From a selling perspective, but also from a knowledge perspective, we see a lot of value that is being driven from Guru and what we're doing. So, yeah, it wasn't anything fancy, honestly, for this go around. When we first started putting together analytics for what we were trying to do before we actually purchased Guru, there's a lot more that went into it. Tons of slides on what we were trying to show. This one was more so we tried to condense it down and really into a one pager when it was all said and done to present to the CEO and team. But when I had presented to like our CIO and some other folks, there was a little bit more detailed information around analytics, and we tried to showcase everything that had been done in H1 and even go back and look at things that had happened in 2018 and 2019. So just a bunch of historic analytics on whether we were looking at adoption, amount of users. I mean, some of the stuff that's right out of the box, I think, is really what we tapped into, because a lot of people just don't know that information, at least not on our side. So we just kind of leveraged the easy stuff first. And then when people ask for more, we we provided more insight into that.
Yeah, can I add to that? I would
Mhm.
say, so I worked with Brantley. I'm a CSM for ServiceSource. What is this, 3 years running?
Mhm.
We're so happy that Brantley's back. What I would say is, I think whenever we work with customers to figure out like how they want to prove the value, it's obviously great if you have access as a champion, or even just someone in your company can share it with you, to like internal outcome metrics. Like, for instance, if you're a sales team or support team, like number of tickets closed, or average time to like more business related quantitative data. I think for Brantley's team, because he was coming in, we didn't have a lot of historical data to use. We thought, like, let's just use the Guru data that we have around adoption and trust score. And then hopefully, right, like now that they're signed on for another year or two, we can now like compare the metrics from today to like down the road, now that we have time to measure all that. But I know getting those metrics can sometimes be a challenge when you're at a smaller big company, kind of like understanding like what your boss cares about, like what exactly, like maybe there's 3 metrics that they care about. If you can get those even just like in a spreadsheet early on, and then sort of track them over the month or maybe every 6 months, that kind of stuff can be really helpful down the line when you're going to renewal. It's hard to show like one-to-one that Guru was the one thing that brought that, a number up, but definitely helps. But I think, but like Brantley was saying, like even a company his size, we were able to just leverage trust score, adoption, and some of the data that's already available in Guru's analytics, and just make it presented a little bit more personalized based on their account. So you have a lot of resources. Just work with your CSM, and happy to work with the rest of you, any of your teams, if you guys are wanting to do this. But I would say, like, if you want to start small, it's easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Hillary. Yeah, it looks like we have one more question in the chat for Brantley. And we're going to spend like 5 or so more minutes talking about this as a big group, and then split out into breakup groups. But Bonnie had a good question. She said, we're facing the issue of being acquired and having a competing knowledge base. So what did you feel were key Guru features that convinced your org to settle on Guru? So Brantley, would love to hear a little bit more from you, because I know streamlining was a big part of this. But then also, if anybody else has faced certain challenges, feel free to jump in and share your perspective as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we actually have a ton of competing knowledge bases. When you talk about, let's say, our reps that work for Google's going to have their own internal knowledge bases that they use for various things. Every logo we work on behalf of has those as well. So we have to almost keep a separate Guru for our teams and our ServiceSource specific and proprietary material, but also like our secret sauces and how we engage with these particular accounts like Google. Now, I think what was also difficult is we had, when we were still looking at Guru and shopping around the market at other platforms, I think the thing that set Guru aside was, number one, honestly, it was a much cheaper, cost-effective solution than some of the other ones that we were looking to, especially the whole thing 2 years ago we were looking at was Salesforce integration. And a lot of these other platforms, that was their big deal. Like, yeah, we're fully integrated with Salesforce. You're basically living and breathing in Salesforce. Knowledge is there. But Guru could still do a flash of that as well. It may not have been fully integrated at the time, and now they've continued to advance and do things over the past 2 years that's not an issue. But that was a key thing. And then the contextual stuff and the interface, I think, was key. I mean, we have a young workforce at ServiceSource, and it just made sense to have something that was new and flashy and that was bite-sized information in card format instead of these long, drawn-out, long process articles that we had in the previous platform. So I think those were key, at least initially. We haven't really been looking, with this renewal that came up, we weren't looking at anything that was competing since then. So thankfully we've settled that this is the way to go. It's just a matter of how do we get the right amount of licenses this time was the key. So
thank you, Brantley.
Yeah, sure, Bonnie.
Thank you. So we're going to switch gears here real quick. The last one that came in, speaking about integrating with an LMS, Brantley, could you remind us what LMS you use with Guru? I know you told me the name, but it's a...
Yeah, we actually just switched. It's called Docebo. We've since rebranded it into something that's more ServiceSource specific, but yeah, it's called Docebo. Yeah, so Guru and Docebo are not like fully integrated by any means at this point. You know, maybe eventually. Feel like Guru's always rolling out new integrations. Maybe we'll get there, but I think it's a smaller business, this LMS. So we moved from a Litmus application to this one in Docebo. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to make that communication clear what an LMS does versus the knowledge base and when to use them. So I've got a nice like almost battle card or like infographic to share with people all the way up to executives to be like, here's the difference between the two, when you use them, when you don't. So
Cool. Yeah, and if anybody has follow-up questions on the LMS or even how to communicate it, like you were saying, Brantley, there's quite a few people in the community who don't necessarily use that platform, but use, WorkRamp or SkillJar or Lessonly that have different approaches within their organization. So always feel free to start a thread there and just ask. I can also go back and see what different discussions have already happened and link you to some of those threads in the past. But it's a great question that people definitely continue to tackle. And you can find a really nice balance between your LMS and Guru. But I'm just going to share my screen and do some final slides before we go into breakout rooms. But thank you, everybody, for your thoughtful questions. And, really glad that we were able to take the time to hear from Brantley today. And I think the lesson around knowing your different users, knowing what your business really cares about, and then also knowing how to communicate to each of those people individually and streamlining overall were big lessons that came through. So before we go to breakout rooms, don't forget about these community resources. We are here to help. I'm glad that in our discussion, we were able to call out a few more things that could help you specifically. So we'll follow up with more places to where you can find those resources from our CSMs. Always lean on the Guru community and just post, because we are here to help and support you. It sounds like the Guru deep dive on analytics would be a great place for you guys to have follow-up discussions on this. I think this slide may be incorrect, but the next Guru deep dive on analytics will be August 18th, so you can check it out. And then lastly, before we hop off into breakout rooms, I did just want to emphasize that a lot of these topics for Guru the Gatherings or deep dives or even community discussions come from people like you. Like the idea for today's topic came from something Gabriel was working on. And, we start to see trends of questions customers are asking, and the, it's definitely reasonable that if you have a question, it's likely somebody else has that same question or is navigating that same challenge. And so the whole point of these events are to bring people together to talk about those together and kind of get you to move past those roadblocks. So if you have feedback on how these sessions can be more valuable to help you do so, what topics you'd like to see next, be sure to reach out to me or Chris. Email us, find us in the Slack community, just send your feedback our way, because we are constantly iterating and here to listen. So thank you guys for your time. We're going to be splitting out into breakout rooms, and feel free to get to know each other and also continue the discussion on next steps for building your Guru business case. I will see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.